Story by Minnie MHLK72. If you see her, run. I was 10 years old, sister 2. My sister and I were just normal kids with normal parents who were both alive and well, which makes the following dream all the more bizarre. In the dream, we were in an orphanage. The dream felt materially real, but with normal dream disturbances and floatiness. It had cold hallways and cathedral ceilings. Eerily quiet it was. My sister was there with me, and there was a caretaker too. At first, nothing seemed wrong in this lucid state. The caretaker was just there, watching us. But it didn't take too long for the shoe to drop. I don't know how to describe it exactly. Dreams can turn completely bonkers, monkeys on cake strange instantly, but still. So the caretaker's whole energy changed. No, not monkey style. Instead, she felt dangerous. By the end, we were running, full sprint through those hallways, the caretaker behind us, and all I had was one thought: get my sister out. It felt like a Resident Evil game with the giant lady in fancy clothes coming for us. And this was well before either of us played it. In heart-pounding panic, eventually I found a window. I helped my sister through it first, literally pushed her out, and made sure she was clear. And then, before I followed, I told her to wake me up. Odd thing to say in a dream state, but I was very lucid, very aware, even though I was terrified that it was a dream. So I specifically told her to wake me up. I instinctively knew that was the key to escape. Sounds conflicting, to know it's a dream yet to need an escape. It was a confining nightmare. A few seconds later, I felt a jolt back into my own body, my own bedroom, my own bed. My sister was standing there. She had woken me up. We stared at each other without a syllable leaving our lips, because we both knew what it meant. She had woken me up because of her dream and my dream, the same dream simultaneously. We were running from the same thing in that nightmare realm, being chased by the resident lady. And somehow, across whatever strange invisible ethereal rope separates two people's sleeping minds, I told her to wake me up, and she did, because that's what she needed to do. It's never happened again. Not once in 15 years. We've talked about it a handful of times over the years when our conversations drift off into the naturally weird and spooky atmosphere. When someone asks if you believe in anything you can't explain. We always arrive at the same place. We don't know. We genuinely don't know. Did our shared terror mean anything? Was it a warning? If it was, neither of us had any clue what it meant. We didn't change any of our choices, nor was there any obvious connection, like a big lady being dangerous and to avoid her. And our parents are still together and alive, so why an orphanage? But it was a cool thing to experience anyway. I suspect most 10-year-olds would have much more lingering trauma from something like this, but not us. We're sisters bonded for life, and we're well before this. Nothing will break us. Yeah, shared dreams, again, I think it's like quantum entanglement, where people who are closely connected, siblings often, parents, very closely bonded friends, close friends, not acquaintances, can become synced. Their brains mesh together via some ethereal rope, as you kind of allude to, some tether between brains that we can't see or detect, at least for right now. And this linking can interact even in the dreamscape. Now, was this actually some supernatural entity that was infiltrating your dreams and trying to terrorize you? And if the Resident Evil lady did catch you in the dream, that you'd die in real life or something like that? I don't think so. I think it really was just a nightmare that you were sharing together in real time. It's like, I think we're in a simulation. So this would be a simulation in a simulation. It's the inception, how deep does a rabbit hole go? Can you dream within a simulation within a dream? You get the idea. But you were both aware. Actually, you didn't mention if she was fully aware. She woke up and remembered the dream, but was she lucid during it? Maybe. The only anomaly is how you describe the dream or nightmare, I guess is a more appropriate way to frame it, as being so lucid and material and, still had the dream weirdness, but I've never been fully lucid in a dream before. Maybe halfway there. I don't remember the dream itself. I just remember the feeling of being slightly aware that it was a dream, but it's odd because I know it's a dream, but I kind of interact with the dream world as if it's not. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but yeah, I think minds can be linked. As simple as that. If you're really close with someone. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And even in nightmare situations. Welcome, I'm Paul. This is Dave. Today I have 12 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. My favorite one involves a lot of the same. Let's get to it. Oh, like the video, tell me your favorite story, all that good stuff. Let's get to it. Story by Sanon User. The Temporary Door DLC. I've had a few glitches in my life, but most are probably just poor memory or simple coincidence. One in particular, though, has stuck with me and my wife for years. It was nice to be with a witness because it eliminates second guessing. About 7 years ago, we were living in a typical suburban neighborhood with typical sidewalks, schools, and parks. We walked our dog every night after dark and enjoyed multiple routes throughout the neighborhood. One route included a middle school, and we would walk behind and around the athletic fields. One night, walking around the school grounds, we both noticed a strange small door in the brick wall on the back of the school. The door was small, like 3 to 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide. No windows or anything, just a plain basic door, just small. The brick wall was large, close to 20 foot tall and over 100 feet long. There are 2 sets of regular doors on either end, but nothing but brick in between. Again, no windows. The indoor school gym is on the other side. The small door was halfway between the regular entry and exit doors. It looked so out of place. We had walked past this part of the school dozens of times. Neither of us remembered a small door, and that's why we both kept talking about it. I guess some stuff like a utility door for equipment and stuff like that, and my wife mentioned a storage closet. We were about 75 feet away as we walked by, and we both kept staring at each other. It just seemed so strange being there, and its size didn't make sense. Neither of us walked up to it or anything like that, but I wish we did. We just walked by looking and talking about it. The back of the school was well lit, so as plain as day, a small door in a brick wall. 3 to 4 nights later, we did the same route. I brought up the door and said I'm going to check it out up close this time. When we got to the back of the school, we both jumped dead in our tracks. There was no little door, just a plain brick wall. It was kinda jarring, honestly. It was weird seeing a door that neither of us remembered. It was much stranger expecting it to be there and nothing was there. We both walked to the brick wall and started looking for any signs of the doorway being recently bricked in. Nope, just old brick and mortar from the same vintage. Nothing disturbed or different along the whole face of the wall. It was the strangest damn thing. The only logical thing we can think of was someone laid a small door against the brick wall before, but it just doesn't make sense. It didn't look like that. It looked framed into the wall, and we weren't far away from it when we saw it. A leaning door would have been obvious, especially from the side. During the following years, there was always a level of nerves taking that route. We always expected to see a little door show up again, but it didn't, just a brick wall. Okay, so I'm thinking there's a couple explanations, or maybe not explanations, but just ideas for this, in that, what if, okay, it's a simulation, which is what everyone knows I believe is the case for this world, and then you ask, okay, what if the developers or the game masters can implement Easter eggs or even exits to it? What if maybe your subconscious can input in the real world the idea that you want to leave? And then part of the agreement to be in the simulation is you have to have that escape opportunity. And so they can give you a sign, but it can't be too obvious to to affect other people who are still plugged in and want to remain in the Matrix, basically. So this door was an exit out of it. And the fact that it was so bizarre and small and out of place is part of the reason, is part of the design to make you think, okay, yeah, something's wrong here. Maybe you just didn't really want to leave enough, but if you went through the door, maybe you would have woken up in the real world. That's my guess. It's like Neo, instead of having to go, to a phone booth and answer a phone that's ringing, you just go through the door. Ooh. I'm gonna pay attention to any anomalous doors in my environment. Although, even if I knew, would I want to exit the Matrix? I don't know. Because could you come back? You don't know if you can come back. I like my life. I don't really want to end it. Not yet anyway. So would you step through the door if you knew it would take you out of this simulation? What's the real world like? It's kind of scary. Story by Kupo777. The alley cache bugged out. This actually happened maybe only 7 months ago, and it's pretty creepy, so strap in. It was about 11 or midnight-ish, and I was in bed scrolling on my phone, and somehow I noticed it was dark in my room. Now that sounds stupid, but it was too dark. Like when a really small detail is out of place that even you're surprised you spotted. And I put my phone down and looked at my curtains and realized that the streetlights were out, which is why it was so dark. And so I got up and opened my curtains and noticed that we were having a blackout. I could hear a quiet sound like it was coming from down the street, and opened my window to listen better, and realized it was an alarm. I don't know why I felt so compelled to go out and find it, but I did. At midnight I got dressed and walked down the street in a blackout to find the alarm. Now on the way to the main square of the town I live in, you have to walk by a William Hill, and then there's an alleyway right past it. Here's where the creepy, unexplained stuff happened. As I walk by, I hear some sniffling and weeping. I look down the alleyway, and from the low moonlight I could make out the features of a little girl, balled up, leaning against the wall, or at least I could see a black silhouette of a girl, since it's still a complete blackout at this point. I stood there sort of frozen, sort of scared, but not enough to feel I had to walk away. After a few moments, I called out, asking if she was okay, but I didn't get a response. I saw the outline of her head shift and turn in my direction. I crap you not. At that exact moment, all the power in the town came back on, and honestly, I wish it didn't. As all the light came back on, including the light in the alley, the girl completely and utterly vanished. No more crying or sniffling, no one sat there. I cannot even begin to explain how my entire body ran freezing cold at that moment. I thought the world itself was playing a sick joke on me. The power in the town went out again, another blackout. And the girl was back, still balled up in the same spot. Her head still turned, looking at me, still softly crying, but still too dark to see anything about her. That's when I noped out of there and ran faster than ever. Like my body was moving on pure adrenaline, and ran back home and hopped back in bed, waiting for the power to come back, and just stayed awake till 6 a.m., just wondering if any of that really happened to me. I still think about it regularly now. Story by XBunnyXP, a chocolate buff applied. I went to Costco with my mom because she was picking up some snacks for her students. She told me I could pick up a couple of snacks for myself too, so I chose a giant box of Oreos and a giant box of Rice Krispie treats. A couple days later, I was bored, and what do you do when you're bored? I eat. At the time, I was in the mood for something salty, and was kind of mad at myself for not picking up some chips or something. Anyway, I decided to eat some Oreos, thinking once I began eating them, maybe I'll develop the taste for something sweet. Now keep in mind, these Oreos come in a large box of 12 packs. Each pack contains 13 Oreos, which I always thought to be a weird amount. Why not 12 or 14? Unfortunately, after eating the first Oreo, I was turned off and put the rest of them in a Ziploc bag for another day, so they wouldn't get stale. A few days later, I'm in the mood for Oreos, so I open the Ziploc, but both sides are completely sealed, like straight out of the factory, as if it had never been opened before. I counted the amount of Oreos in the pack and compared it to a few of the others still in the box, and of course, there were only 12 compared to 13. Meaning, I had eaten from the pack in the Ziploc, yet it somehow perfectly sealed itself shut, as if it had never been opened before. I was spooked, but still ate the rest of the Oreos anyway, and put the Ziploc to the side. A few hours later, I'm in the mood for Rice Krispies. The box is a variety pack, so it has a full chocolate flavor, a chocolate drizzle flavor, and a candy-coated chocolate flavor. The candy-coated chocolate ones are very inconsistent. Sometimes they would be coated with 1 chocolate, sometimes they'd be coated with 10. I opened one of the candy-coated chocolate ones, and I remember vividly that there were only 2 of them on the Rice Krispie, so I loosely put back in the wrapper, took the same Ziploc that I had the Oreos in, and put the Krispie in there. I opened another Krispie, and fortunately that one had a decent amount of chocolate on it, so I ate that one. A couple days later, I'm ready to eat the plain Rice Krispie, mostly plain. So I opened the Ziploc, and I kid you not, when I pulled back the wrapper, it was filled to the brim with chocolate. Sadly, I forgot exactly how many I counted, but it was around 12 to 14. Again, I still ate the Rice Krispie, but ultimately threw away the Ziploc bag as I was creeped out. Story by Ludi Bick, A Moody Ring. When I was in 3rd grade, I went to a book fair and got a bunch of stuff about magic. My uncle was already teaching me about the metaphysical stuff in the world from a young age, up until he died a couple years ago. He was still a practicing Catholic, but studied Eastern religions and philosophies too. He was always very level-headed. He used to work for the State Department, had a security clearance, but was super spiritual. Anyways, I got this mood ring at a book fair. The girl who sat next to me in history class had glasses. We used to do typical elementary school antics like whisper and tickle each other, etc. Well, I had the mood ring, had been reading about magic and manifestation. I tried to impress her by telling her I could make the ring vanish if I put it in her glasses case. Of course, I was assuming it wouldn't work and was just being silly. I was a kid, right? Well, when I convinced her to let me put the ring in her case and keep it in her desk, I told her I could make it vanish within 10 seconds if I focused. I kid you not, the crap happened. We were both flabbergasted. It happened like twice, and the last time, the ring never came back. Story by Anonymous. The clone department is hiring. I've always struggled with employment. It's a sad fact of life that whatever they say about the economy, good or bad, no one seems to ever want to hire people. And it's not just me. But anyway, this story happened back in 2018 when I was driving down to a timber framing company business center. I heard they were hiring, and I had decent labor experience even back then. The very first thing that hit me as I entered the office area was how chilly it was. I'm used to offices being kept around 68 Fahrenheit. This had to be much lower, maybe 60. Can't imagine what their electricity bill must have been. But that was odd in of itself, especially given how half the employees in the office were women, who in my experience despise cold indoor air. They were bundled up in cardigans and thicker sweaters, but still strange. What I consider a real mystery to this day were the men. They were all identical to each other. And I mean identical. Stubby, and they had the same length of blonde beards, same haircuts, same formal white shirts with formal pants overalls, same faces, obviously. If you imagine cloning humans and dressing them up the same, having them filtered through the same barber line and file, this would be the inevitable result. I'm well aware of the doppelganger phenomenon, but this vastly exceeds that. There were at least 6 men all the same. The women were all distinct, which is another disconnected piece of the puzzle. Separate to the office entrance area and the back area, with the men clones, there's another space to the right. One big window, but a closed door, locked I presumed, with yet another man 100% off a printing press like the rest. Blonde, beard, clothes, facial features, you name it. These guys could all impersonate each other's identities with no effort or suspicion. As weird as this was, I still spoke with the secretary at the front, and told her I was looking for work. She buzzed the boss in the office. He came out. I told him I was looking for a job and handed him my resume. A bit gauche, I know, but I'm straight to the point and always have been. He left it on the secretary's desk and said thanks. He'd look at it later. Don't know if he ever did. Never got a call back, and no, I didn't inquire as to the freaking weirdness of the clone army they were cooking up in the back. I don't really think they were dangerous, but it was just too weird. And I think the only danger would be asking questions. Yeah, this is a weird story, and I have no real solutions, like doppelgangers. You can probably explain that with multiverse theory. It's just either someone ported over their whole body to the same universe and they don't really belong, but it's just one. But having 6, I guess with the boss, it would be 7 copies identical. And to have them all in the same place and interacting, working together, and no one, how does that even happen? Even if it's in the same geographic area and they just happen to live close to each other and they all happen to be hired by the same guy, there's just no way. The odds of that are impossible. They're astronomical on top of astronomical. And then that everyone would just be calm and cool about it. No one, it's like, if that was just really a mundane thing that happened, no glitches at all, everyone there who'd come in would obviously be like, what the hell is going on? Why do you have a clone army in the back? And they would ask those questions. I mean, maybe some people would be afraid to ask like you were, and I understand that. I don't know if I would ask anything either, but some people would ask, and it would be a topic. They'd have like a sign up like, don't worry, this is normal. Yes, they're all clones, but move on. It's not important or something like that. They'd have a sign plastered like, okay, we know this is weird. Don't worry about it. But no, they just act like it's normal. So it's almost like they don't see each other as the same. Was this some hallucination? Would be a very weird one though, right? I don't know. I can't explain this one, but the fact it's so weird is definitely interesting. Story by Character Cat, 8178. The Great Magnetic Escape. First of all, if you don't know what a cassette tape is, Google it and you'll see. In 1994, I just got the latest cassette tape in the mail from BMG Music. Opened it up, placed it inside the tape player, and pressed play. You should know the first few seconds of the tape are clear, and then the music plays. All cassette tapes are like this. When the clear part passed, the music began, but then it stopped. I turned around and pushed play. It started again. I turned my head and it stopped. I pushed play, but the button wouldn't click in place. It refused to play the tape. I took it out thinking it needed a little hand tuning. When I put the tape back in the player, closed the lid and pushed play, it stopped and the door opened and tried to eject the tape, but my hand was right there and prevented it. I let a few minutes pass and then tried again to play. This time, the music played normally. I stood there watching for a couple of minutes with my hand on the door. At the exact moment I removed my hand, the door popped open and the tape flew out above my head. I immediately followed the tape to the spot where it landed behind me. As I was reaching down, the cassette tape disappeared. I was looking at it when it happened. There, then not there. I searched everywhere naturally, but I found nothing. 6 months later, as I was packing things to move to another home, I found the tape. It was wedged up behind the tape player, tucked up underneath the bottom of it. There was no freaking way that was possible, but it happened. The real question you had to ask is, what was responsible for that to happen? Bottom line, there was an invisible infernal force that I had been battling with for over a year. It wreaked havoc on me and my family all that time. It performed those little stunts just to chip away at your sanity. It did much worse things than make a tape disappear. Story by Don't Ask Again is taken. Apartment version 2.0. My old roommate and I were apartment shopping. We looked at about a half dozen places. We wouldn't really discuss anything about the place until we were in his car after. We ended up really liking the last one we looked at and decided to get it. A few days go by and we're both off work, so we head to the last complex to sign the lease. When we got to the office, things were gone. I figured it was the time of day and all the natural light that meant the staff and hue of the walls were different. While I was thinking about this, my roommate asked to see the room one more time. they agree, and take us to the unit. We looked around for a minute or two. I asked the agent for some privacy so we could have a discussion. Once the front door closed, I asked, "Is it just me, or is everything different?" My roommate agreed. He noticed on the first visit that in the office the lounge was to the left and the gym was to the right. The pool was to the west instead of east. Once inside the unit, the whole layout was different. We both agreed that it was the same location, same name, etc. Just so much was reversed. Even the manager's name and rent was the same as our notes. We got the apartment and it kicked butt. Best place I ever lived by far. But I still sometimes think that we woke up in a different timeline, a reversed timeline. Story by Particular Lychee, 1794. The Pen That Played Dead. I lost my favorite pen last night at the end of my bed on the sheet. It's a dark gray fitted sheet. Nothing is loose with one blanket, aka there's no material that's really loose on the bed except for the blanket. This morning, I went back to the bottom of the bed, flipped up the blanket, and looked again. Wasn't there. I did not touch the bed or anything after this. I didn't move. I turned my head toward the front of the mattress and blanket and thought, maybe it fell between the bed frame. As I turned my head back down to the spot I had just checked, there it was, clear as day. It actually jump scared me. I never thought I'd be jump scared by a pen. I grabbed it and ran out of the room. I tried to look it up to see if I was crazy, and instead all this glitch in the matrix stuff came up. It doesn't make any sense for a few reasons. The sheet is dark gray, the pen is bright aqua blue. It's easily seen. I took the blanket off and shook it out last night. Nothing was there. I looked at the same spot last night because I've known I set it there, and this morning, nothing was there. If the pen had been there all night, I would have kicked it off easily. I would have felt it hit my foot at the minimum. It would be right by my left foot, 2 inches from the end of the mattress. Story by Snake Flaps. Tinked and Lost. When I was 27, I was working a side gig as a seamstress at a haunted house in an abandoned strip mall church. Everyone said it was actually haunted, and I'm somewhere between a believer and a skeptic, so I didn't really believe it, but I can't discount my one super weird experience. I was prepping for a night of sewing and setting up my machine and threading in the bobbin with the bobbin plate cover. A small, thin, and flat piece of plastic about 1 inch by ½ inch that sits over the cavity where the bobbin gets threaded in to give you a flat surface to work on. Sitting on the table I was working at, I managed to knock it off the table and heard it land right by my feet on the concrete floor with a little tink noise. When I leaned down to grab it, it was gone. Just completely gone in a room that was almost entirely empty except for some old pews that the actors would hang on during the break. I scoured every inch of that floor with a flashlight for over an hour, convinced I must have kicked it or something when I went to grab it. I finally gave up and used my credit card as a makeshift cover for the bobbin, just for the evening, and moved the furniture back where it was supposed to go at the end of the night. The next day I went back, moved all the furniture, and reset my table to where I needed it, set myself up to begin my work, and when I scooted my chair up to the desk, I felt the bobbin plate cover under my foot, exactly where it would have landed when I dropped it the day before, having reappeared out of thin air. I still get the weirdest chills when I think about it. Story by Wonderful Weather, 507. A very friendly Longview. When I was a teenager, my mom took me on a road trip over in Washington State. Dad was working back home. This was spontaneous. Thinking about it, I suspect they were having marital issues, but they're still together decades later, so hooray on however they salvaged things. But yeah, we were driving around, nothing but rural roads and large trees to keep us cozy company. We were navigating by paper map, before GPS days. You youngins have no idea how easy you have it, let me tell you. But we came across a road that seemed to go on forever, and that we couldn't find on the map. I was a designated navigator, a prestigious title, yes. Failing in my only duty, it seems I was. Eventually, after almost an hour of zooming, we came across an old-looking gas station on the outskirts of Longview, Washington. The operator there was happy to try to help us with directions, fill our tank up with gas, but as we described the road we had taken to get there, he had no idea where it was. No straight road in the area you could drive for over a half an hour on in any direction. Everything's curvy and windy in these parts. Another local heard us talking, maybe because my mom was becoming more and more agitated as the minutes went by. It bothered her more than it did me at the time. Older chap, also kind. Why is everyone so kind over here? Lovely. But he injected in and said too that there's no roads like that in these parts. We believed them, which meant the road we drove on was either extremely hidden, but not because it connected onto the I-5. Not a major artery, but enough space to safely merge in. Or it didn't exist, but it was paved. So wouldn't that rule out a logging road? Since then, with Google Maps now, I've scanned it many times and never found anything like the road we were on. Almost perfectly straight for dozens of kilometers. So yeah, probably just multiverse theory in this one. Space-time portals have to be able to connect to different universes too. I always just thought and assumed that it was just within the confines of the same universe and really the same planet. I guess you could, in theory, Rosen-Einstein bridges, which is what this would basically be in terms of the mathematics that we know allow for wormholes. There isn't a limit on distance, so if it was stable, which again, pointing out that as far as we know, they should be unstable even for a proton to go through. But assuming, our government or aliens or whatever have the technology to create stable Einstein-Rosen bridges or wormholes, they could go anywhere in the universe, pretty much. There'd be no real limit to that. Maybe the energy required to go greater distances, but you could, in theory, end up anywhere. But if we're talking about different universes, that's a different layer entirely. I mean, that's still only theoretical, at least scientifically speaking. We do have the many worlds interpretation for quantum phenomena. We have issues where the future cannot be written. However, in the classical Einstein general relativity, it kind of is, because everything is on a world line and time itself is a fixed pathway. Time is just a destination, not really a journey in that view. But this doesn't really align with different quantum phenomena that are truly random, like cesium decay, an atom's decay, the exact time that an individual particle will decay, and the vector orientation of that decay is completely random, and there's no hidden information within these atoms. So the universe itself doesn't know, which means the future isn't predicted, so these are incompatible. One way to fix that is to say that any event that can happen spawns a different universe, and they're all out there. So the future is kind of written within each universe. However, there's almost infinite universes, and everything that can happen happens in one of them. So that's how they get around it. And it's an interesting concept, and it certainly allows for all these theories about the multiverse and everything. I'm kind of going on a tangent again, which I always do, but yeah, I just think that space-time portals are some link for this multiverse ocean, the vast web that is beyond large. As if we need a larger reality, because the universe itself, just the one we know we're in right now, is already so freaking large. It's incomprehensible. But yeah, reality's just big. What can you say? And there might be these space-time Rosen bridges that allow us to travel it even between universes. So yeah, that's probably what happened here. Or it was just some road that back then was paved but not on any map and still isn't now today, and the locals don't know about it. I mean, that's not impossible, but it is unlikely. Story by Ashley Elisa. Loot and the Side Quest. About 6 months ago, I came back from a work trip where I'd brought 5 Nintendo Switch video games with me. I'm a creature of habit and always put my video games in the same 2 spots, if not 1 spot. Electronic pouch. They're in a specific backpack pocket. Well, a bit after I unpacked, I thought, where are my Switch games? I immediately go into a frenzy, looking for $300 worth of games, since I rarely misplace things. I turned my office upside down, looking in all the places it could possibly be. No luck. My wife could tell that I was stressed and sad at the thought of losing a chunk of my games. Most of them were ones we played together. She goes out of her way to double check places I've already looked at, just so we can be sure I didn't overlook them. Again, no luck. At this point, I sulk in the sadness and begin to accept that I lost them for good. I stopped looking for them since we couldn't find them anywhere. Fast forward to today. I'm shopping the internet and thinking about getting a Nintendo Switch 2. I go down the rabbit hole and start looking at games just to be reminded of the games I scroll by, I once had and lost. I get the idea. Let me check my electronics pouch one more time. No clue where that fleeting thought came from, and why there specifically. I run into the office, open my pouch, and 6 months later, all the games are in there. I searched this pouch at least 6 times, removed every single thing from it, had my wife do the same thing on her own. We did it together, and the games were not in this pouch. All that to say, 1. I'm elated I found my games. 2. Where the hell were they this entire time? And 3. What timeline did we jump to? I always read Glitch in the Matrix stories, and wondered when I'd have something to contribute. If my wife never looked as well, she'd probably think I just didn't look hard enough, but she did, so she's just as baffled as I am. Now time for the jokes of the day. Woman, I regret ever joining that Star Wars dating app. Man, you were looking for love in all around places. Woman, and I really regret marrying a Star Wars pun addict. Man, it was a Wookiee mistake. Woman, just sign it. Man, signing. May divorce be with you. May the Force be with us all. My son came to me and asked, Dad, can you explain to me what is a solar eclipse? Then I responded to him, No, son. Went to the doctor about my obsessive bragging, and he gave me an anti-boasting cream. I can't wait to rub it in. Did you hear about the new Chinese light bulbs? They never burn out, they just dim some. My dad just finished making a model of Mount Everest. I asked him if it was to scale. He said, No, it's a look at. More glitches up here, don't forget to check them out. I'll see you next time.